The sun beats down on Willow Creek Estates, a pristine suburban paradise where every lawn is trimmed to perfection, every house is painted in approved shades of beige, and every neighbor wears the same polite but distant smile. It's the kind of place where diversity means one or two exceptional black families on the HOA's terms. I wheel myself down my newly installed ADA-compliant ramp, enjoying the smooth glide of my chair. It took months of battles with the Homeowners Association, but I won. The ramp is here to stay. Or so I thought. It's been 3 months since I moved in, and the welcome wagon never quite made it to my doorstep. That's fine. I didn't move here to make friends. After 20 years in the military, I've had my fill of forced pleasantries. I came here for peace, for the quiet. I earned that much, but peace is a tricky thing in a place like this. A few neighbors pause their morning routines to observe me, not greet, not chat, just observe. Mrs. Calloway, 2 houses down, pretends to check her mail, though she's staring straight at me. Across the street, a man waters his lawn, grip tightening on the hose as I roll by. I know that look. I've seen it in war zones, in boardrooms, in places where men like me weren't supposed to exist. I let it roll off my back. They can watch all they want. I'm not going anywhere. That's when I hear it. A sharp voice, tight with forced politeness. Excuse me, excuse me. I glance up. Linda Halverson, HOA president. The Queen of Willow Creek Estates. She moves toward me with the confidence of someone who's never been told no. Mr. Daniels, she chirps, smiling with all her teeth. We need to talk about that. She points at my ramp like it's a pile of garbage left on the curb. I hold her gaze, keeping my voice even. What about it? Her smile flickers. Oh, don't get me wrong, we love that you're taking initiative. It's just that, well, we've had some concerns from residents. Here it comes, concerns. I echo. She leans in slightly, lowering her voice. A few of the neighbors feel that it disrupts the aesthetic of the community. I stare at her. She's serious. It's an eyesore, she continues, unfazed by my silence. And, well, you understand how important property values are in a place like this. I exhale through my nose. So that's their angle. I spent 2 decades defending this country. I've led teams into battle, faced down threats that would make these people cower in their designer kitchens. And now, my biggest fight is against a woman who thinks my wheelchair ramp is ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. Linda tilts her head. I'm sure we can find a reasonable solution, right? I give her a long, steady look. No a beat of silence. Her smile tightens. I've just made an enemy, and something tells me Linda Halverson doesn't take no for an answer. How's that for a setup? It establishes the racial and social tension, foreshadows Linda's coming hostility, and keeps the pace tight and engaging. Want any tweaks? I wake up the next morning to something off. The air smells sharp, chemical, wrong. Not the usual mix of fresh grass and expensive perfume that drifts through Willow Creek Estates. My gut tightens. Something happened. I wheel toward the front door, instincts honed from years of reading danger before it strikes. The moment I open it, the smell hits full force, burnt, bitter, slick. My stomach drops as my eyes trail down to my wheelchair ramp, now coated in a thick, gleaming layer of motor oil. The dark liquid pools at the base, seeping into the cracks of my driveway, turning the wood and concrete into a deadly slip zone. My jaw tightens. This wasn't an accident. I scan the neighborhood. The same pristine streets, the same immaculate lawns. A few neighbors sip coffee on their porches, watching me. Not helping. Not reacting. Just watching. My skin prickles. They know. Across the street, Linda Halverson stands beside her manicured hydrangeas, pretending to inspect a flower. But I see the slight curve of her lips. The satisfaction in her posture. She's waiting for what? For me to lose control? For me to take one wrong move, let my wheels slide out from under me, send me sprawling? I won't give her that. I inhale deeply, reining in the simmering rage climbing up my spine. Stay calm. Stay controlled. That's how I survived deployments, boardroom interrogations, rooms full of people who underestimated me. I wheel backward, careful not to touch the ramp. The oil shimmers in the morning light, an unmistakable act of sabotage. But without proof, without catching someone in the act, it's my word against the HOAs, and I already know how that'll go. A door creaks open to my left. An older black woman, Mrs. Carter, steps onto her porch. Her eyes flick to the ramp, then to me. She doesn't say anything. Just presses her lips together and gives a slight, knowing shake of her head. She's seen this before. I nod in return. Message received, but I refuse to play victim. They want me gone. They'll have to do a hell of a lot more than spill some oil. I turn, locking eyes with Linda. She lifts a hand in a little wave. That's all it takes. That tiny, smug gesture ignites something deep in my chest. She thinks she's won already. She has no idea who she's up against. I don't just fight back. I win. Game on. I don't wait. By 9 a.m., I'm rolling into the Willow Creek HOA office, housed in a too-perfect brick building near the community center. A woman at the front desk, Paige, early 30s, nervous smile, glances up from her computer. "Oh, Mr. Daniels, I need to file a formal complaint," I say, placing my phone on the counter. The screen plays a slow pan of my ramp, covered in oil, time-stamped and undeniable. Her fingers twitch over her keyboard. She licks her lips, eyes darting past me. She's scared. Before she can respond, a door swings open. Linda Halverson steps out, dressed in her usual crisp blouse and beige slacks. The smile on her face is pure performance. "She's been expecting me, Mr. Daniels," she greets, voice bright as artificial sugar. What a surprise. I hold up my phone. Somebody vandalized my ramp. She blinks, feigning shock. "Oh, dear. That's awful. Are you sure it wasn't an accident?" My grip tightens on my phone. "An accident?" Linda sighs, placing a hand over her heart. "I only mean, well, you know how unpredictable oil leaks can be. Someone could have been transporting something. Maybe a landscaper had a spill." I narrow my eyes. "Landscapers don't use motor oil." Her smile doesn't waver. "I just don't want to assume the worst. But if you'd like, I can bring it up at the next HOA meeting." I laugh once, sharp, humorless. "You mean the meeting I wasn't invited to?" Linda blinks, her mask slipping for half a second. Then she leans in, lowering her voice. "I know you're upset," she says, all honeyed condescension. "But this is a community, Mr. Daniels. And when people feel uncomfortable, it affects everyone." I go still. There it is. She's not even hiding it anymore. This isn't about my ramp. It's about me. I meet her gaze. "So what happens when I file a police report?" Something flickers in her expression, something quick, calculating. But then she tilts her head, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Oh, dear," she murmurs. "I'd hate for this to become messy. You know how HOAs can be. Rules, fines, violations, a threat. She's daring me to escalate. I keep my face neutral, but inside, I'm already 5 steps ahead. I turn to Paige. "I need a copy of the security footage from last night." Paige freezes. Linda chuckles, shaking her head. "Oh, I wish we could help, but unfortunately, our security cameras don't cover individual properties." Lies. I saw the cameras the day I moved in. They're mounted at every entrance, every street corner. But I say nothing. Let her think she's won this round. Instead, I nod once. "Appreciate your time." Then I roll out the door. By noon, I'm knocking on Mrs. Carter's door. It takes a few seconds before she opens it, peering at me through the crack. "You're not gonna let this go, are you?" she asks, her voice dry. "No." A pause. Then she steps back, opening the door wider. Inside, her living room is cluttered but warm, a lived-in space in a neighborhood that treats homes like showrooms. She motions for me to follow her toward the back, where her curtains are drawn tight. Then she pulls out her own phone. She taps the screen, and a video plays. My heartbeat slows. The footage is grainy, but it's clear enough. 2 figures. One carrying a container. The other keeping watch. The taller one, a man, wearing a HOA badge, uncaps the container and pours a thick stream of oil across my ramp. Linda wasn't working alone. I glance up at Mrs. Carter. Her face is unreadable. "I've lived here 20 years, she murmurs. "I've seen people pushed out for a lot less." I exhale. "She's risking a lot by helping me." I nod. "Thank you." She nods back. "So what's your plan?" I stare at the screen again, watching as the men retreat into the night. Then I pocket my phone, eyes sharp. I'm gonna make them regret ever underestimating me. Raising the stakes. It's no longer just Linda, others in the HOA are involved. The tension is building. Now, it's time to strike. How's this for escalation? Anything you want adjusted? The HOA meeting is held in the Willow Creek Estates clubhouse, a grand space designed for charity galas and wine tastings, not confrontation. Tonight, it's packed, residents murmuring, sipping cocktails, pretending this is just another evening of neighborhood politics. I roll in, feeling every eye snap to me. They know why I'm here. At the front, Linda Halverson stands tall, dressed in her signature beige. She's already smiling. She thinks she's won. I let her believe it. "Ah, Mr. Daniels," she purrs, voice carrying over the room. "So glad you could join us. We were just discussing neighborhood compliance issues." A few smug chuckles ripple through the crowd. They think this is a joke. Linda clears her throat. "It's come to our attention that some additions to properties are not aligning with our community's aesthetic standards." Her eyes flick to me. "Your ramp, for example. I keep my face neutral. Let her talk now, we've all been very patient, she continues, pacing slowly. But after multiple complaints, the board has decided that for the safety and beauty of Willow Creek, we must ask you to remove the structure. A slow, satisfied smirk curls at her lips. She's enjoying this. I glance around the room. A few residents look uneasy. Others sip their wine, unconcerned. A handful, the ones who knew this was coming, watch with expectation. Linda tilts her head. I'm sure you understand. Silence, then, I place my phone on the table, pressing play. The room stills. On screen, two men move in the darkness, one carrying a container, the other keeping watch. The glow of a streetlight catches a gleaming HOA badge on one of their shirts. The room erupts. What the hell is that? Linda, is that your people? Linda's face drains of color. This is outrageous. She laughs, but it's thin, brittle. Mr. Daniels, I don't know what kind of. I raise a hand. I'm not finished. I hit another button. The next clip plays. Mrs. Carter, filming from her porch, whispering, "That's them. That's who did it." The murmurs turn to gasps. Linda blanches. This is ridiculous. This proves nothing. I turn to the crowd. So let me get this straight. My ramp, a legally compliant, ADA-approved structure, hurts the aesthetic, but dumping motor oil on it doesn't. More murmurs. Heads start to nod. The doubt is spreading. Linda sees it. She panics. She slams a hand on the table. This is a private HOA matter, and we will not be intimidated by baseless accusations. Baseless? I arch a brow. Linda, do you know what reckless endangerment means? Her eyes widen. I checked the bylaws. I continue. And guess what? The HOA isn't exempt from criminal investigations. Linda's hands tighten into fists. You wouldn't. I already did. I pull out another device, a voice recorder. Thought you'd say that, I murmur. Then I press play. Linda's own voice fills the room. I'd hate for this to become messy. You know how HOAs can be. Rules, fines, violations, dead silence. Then, someone whispers she threatened him. Linda stumbles back. That's taken out of context. I lean forward. Linda, you poured oil on a disabled man's wheelchair ramp. My voice drops, cold. How do you think a jury will take that context? A ripple of realization washes over the crowd. Linda's done. Her own people, the HOA board members, shift uncomfortably. Some glance at one another, seeing the sinking ship they're tied to. Then, the final blow. The clubhouse doors swing open. Two uniformed officers step inside. Linda freezes. I keep my voice steady. I filed a police report, along with evidence of targeted harassment, ADA violations, and reckless endangerment. I glance at the officers. They'd like to ask you a few questions. Linda's face twists, disbelief, rage, pure, burning humiliation. She opens her mouth, but this time, there's no power left in her voice. She's lost, and the whole room knows she. The moment the police step inside, the room shifts. Linda Halverson, who has spent the last 6 months making my life hell, suddenly isn't in control anymore. Mrs. Halverson, one of the officers, Sergeant Lopez, steps forward, nodding toward her. We need to have a conversation. Linda laughs, sharp and forced. Officer, this is all a misunderstanding. She gestures wildly at the crowd. This man, she practically spits the word, has been causing issues since the day he moved in, making baseless accusations, stirring up drama. Lopez interrupts, calm but firm. We have a report of criminal property damage and reckless endangerment. And a recording of you implying threats over HOA violations. Linda blinks for the first time. I see it, real fear, but then she straightens. I demand to speak to the HOA attorney. A beat, then one of the board members, Roger Whitmore, her longtime ally, clears his throat. I think it's best we let the authorities handle this. Linda, he mutters, eyes avoiding hers. Linda's head snaps toward him. Excuse me? Roger shifts in his seat. He's seen the writing on the wall. The crowd murmurs, neighbors whispering, some looking disgusted. The very people who had been silent before are now watching her burn. Linda's face darkens. You're all turning on me, she hisses, voice dropping. After everything I've done for this neighborhood. You mean everything you've done to it? Mrs. Carter's voice cuts through the noise. She steps forward, chin high. Because I remember every single family you pushed out of here. The ones who didn't fit your little standard. More murmurs. Guilt in some faces. Recognition in others. Linda's jaw tightens. That is an outrageous accusation. Is it? I say, leaning forward. Because I did some digging, Linda. Her eyes flick to me. Dread seeps in. I pull out a folder. Thick. stuffed, and filled with complaints. Over the last 10 years, more than a dozen Black and Latino families have received fines, notices, and compliance issues, often within months of moving in. I tilt my head. And yet, I couldn't find a single white resident given the same treatment. Someone in the back scoffs. Wait, is that true? I keep going. Not to mention the anonymous complaints. I open the folder to a printed email thread, the subject line? Targeted compliance enforcement's the sender? Linda Halverson, someone gasps. Linda lunges forward. That's private. Sergeant Lopez steps between us. Mrs. Halverson, you might want to stop talking. Linda whirls on him. You can't seriously be considering this. Her voice is rising, shrill with panic. I've given my life to this HOA. I've maintained its reputation. Lopez gives her a long, unimpressed look, then he turns to me. Mr. Daniels, do you want to press charges? Linda spins back. Her eyes, wide, almost wild, lock onto mine for the first time. She realizes I hold all the power now. The whole room is watching. The same people who used to look through me are now looking at her like she's a problem that needs to be removed. I lean back, exhaling slowly. Then, finally, I say I don't want an arrest. Linda's breath catches. For a brief second, she thinks she's won, then I add I want full exposure. Linda flinches. I want this HOA investigated. I continue. I want every fine, every violation, every racially targeted complaint reopened and reviewed by the state. I glance at the board. I want every person complicit in this corruption removed. The room erupts, neighbors murmur. Someone, a black couple in the back, nods, whispering to each other. They felt it too. Linda stares at me, shaking her head, then she does something pathetic. She turns to Roger. To the other board members. Pleading, you can't let him do this, she hisses. This is our neighborhood. He's ruining everything. Roger rubs his temples. Linda, you did this. She lets out a shaky, desperate laugh. You spineless little, click. A camera flash goes off. Linda whirls, and there in the back of the room is a local news reporter. I smile. Oh, didn't I mention? I hold up my phone. I sent the story out this morning. Linda turns white, panic floods her face. She looks around, realizing that now this isn't just an HOA issue, this is public. This is her reputation, this is her entire legacy, burning down in real time. She stumbles back. You can't do this. Oh, but I can, I say, watching her crumble, because I don't just fight back. I win. Twist and tables turn. Summary. Linda tries to deflect but is immediately shut down. Her own board members start distancing themselves. Mrs. Carter exposes Linda's long history of racist HOA practices. The protagonist reveals hard-proof emails, records, and a racial discrimination pattern. Linda panics, tries to manipulate, but realizes she's lost all power. A news reporter reveals that the scandal is now public. Linda Halverson is finished. The next morning, her face is all over the news. Local HOA president under investigation for racial discrimination and reckless endangerment. The footage plays on repeat, her own voice, her own threats. HOA emails dissected on morning talk shows. Lawyers on TV explaining how ADA violations alone could lead to lawsuits. And the best part, the state's Fair Housing Commission has launched a full investigation. By noon, Linda resigns from the HOA. By evening, she's been served legal papers. And by the end of the week, Willow Creek Estates is voting on dissolving the entire HOA. I sit on my porch, coffee steaming in my hands, watching the neighborhood that once tried to erase me now face the consequences of enabling her. A few people have the decency to look ashamed. Mrs. Carter stops by, nodding toward the street where Linda's house sits dark, empty. The blinds are drawn. The car's gone. She's hiding out at her sister's, Mrs. Carter says, shaking her head. Can't say I'm surprised. I take a slow sip of coffee. Somehow, I don't think she'll be back. Mrs. Carter chuckles. Oh, honey. Ain't nobody coming back from that kind of fall. Across the street, Roger Whitmore, former HOA vice president, stands by his mailbox, pretending to sort letters. He hesitates before finally looking my way, then a nod. A small one. Stiff. Uncomfortable. But a nod nonetheless. Progress. 1 month later I roll down my brand new ramp, smooth. Sturdy. Paid for by the very HOA that tried to destroy it. Turns out, when you threaten to sue an entire association for ADA violations, they find the funds real quick. The neighborhood looks different now, lighter, freer. With the HOA gone, people are making changes. Actual changes. Kids' bikes line driveways. Mr. Patel puts up wind chimes, something he was fined for last year. The Jeffersons, the only other black family on the block, finally set up their garden gnomes. And no one says a damn word about it. I watch, A moving truck pulls up in front of Linda's old house. A young black couple steps out, their little girl bouncing in excitement. I smile. I don't need an HOA to tell me what looks good in this neighborhood. Justice looks damn good already. Final summary: Linda faces full exposure, resignation, legal action, and public humiliation. The HOA crumbles as people realize the extent of the corruption. The protagonist wins, not just for himself, but for the entire community. By the end, the neighborhood is freer, more inclusive, and no longer under racist control. A final poetic moment: Linda's house, once a symbol of exclusion, now welcomes a new black family. A satisfying, full circle ending. How does this feel? Anything you'd like to add or tweak?